is Friday, February 22nd, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a very drill-full, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. A lot of lessons learned, and not just by me, but at least one taught by me, which always feels really good. You know, when you see somebody and they're having a particular issue at a particular point, and it seems kind of like their brain is turned off, and then you give them that one little tip, that one little thing that they needed to hear, and then all of a sudden it's like they got 2 stripes on their belt and they're like whipping your ass. I had that experience today. It was really cool, actually. There's a gentleman, and I'm going to name him this just this one time because, you know, I got to say, this guy, he's been training at the same gym for about, I would say, somewhere between 6 months and a year with me. And so this guy, over this period of time, has it seems like over the last few months it's starting to really consolidate for him, and he's making some real strides in his progress. Like I said, I told him one thing, and it was like he had 2 additional stripes on that white belt, and he definitely gave me some shit to think about. So this is out to you, Jose. Thank you very much for an excellent roll today. But yeah, like I said, it seemed like he was kind of locked up, and I've rolled with Jose a few times, and he seems very, very self-conscious about the movements that he's making, and honestly, I feel the same way a lot of the time, because as capable as I've become, I still have a lot of doubt about my capability, you know? It's just one of those things that, I don't know, maybe it's something where I'm not spending enough time around it, but I've kind of changed that over the last couple months. Today felt a lot better than probably the last week or so that I've been going to jiu-jitsu. And I got to attribute it to the fact that I'm finally getting on the other side of this fucking lung infection or whatever it was that I had. But yeah, anyway, so I was rolling with Jose today, and I had him in a nice gift wrapped, and I'd already gotten him in 2 arm bars, you know, one on either side, and I was taking it kind of easy, not only for his benefit, but also for my own. You know, I've talked about it on this show a lot of the times where I've talked about how I had issues with it being more a monologue than a conversation. And jiu-jitsu is supposed to be like a debate or at least a chess game, but it's not a monologue. Anyway, so like I said, I took it just a little bit easy because I wanted to really feel out the position. You know, where am I? Where is my opponent? What is my opponent doing? And you know, when I had him in a gift wrap position, I didn't have it around his head, though. I just had him on his side. I had his left wrist pinned up against his chest, and then my left hand down through his elbow and grabbing my own wrist. You know, so I had him pretty locked down. And I was just thinking about the different positions that I could go to from then. And I looked down at Jose, and he was all clenched up, and it seemed like he'd kind of given up and was like kind of bracing for that armbar. And I whispered in his ear, I said, "Where's the pressure?" And he just, it was like his eyes opened up. He looked at the mat for a moment, and then all of a sudden he jumped his right shoulder out from under him, and that pressure that I was holding on his arm there was suddenly like cut in half, and I had a good grip on him still, but he was able to reorient his body to where it wasn't an issue or as big an issue anymore. And it was like from that point on, it like I said, it was like I get him trapped, and I could almost see it going across his forehead. Where's the pressure? And he'd figure it out right away. Next thing I know, he's fucking rolling out of shit, and he's flipping me over. I'm like, I almost regret telling you that, you know, because it was just like that. It was just like that. You know, that one little thought. There's a gap in his thinking there, and as soon as I put that little bit in there, man, it's like it became a full sentence, and it all made sense, and he just fucking went with it. And And I'm sure that a lot of instructors have had an opportunity to see that happen, and probably even with me, where they've told me something and all of a sudden it made sense for me. And so, I gotta say, that's like an incredible gift, really, when you can actually see something you've said to somebody, just a teeny tiny thing, translate into a full concept for them, and then they actually apply it afterward, and you're just like, oh fuck, well, there you go, have a nice day. So yeah, definitely one out to you, Jose. Excellent work today. And it is with that, I actually thought up a first dance, and I want to dedicate this one to Jose for this. And it's because of the situation where you've got two hands, but like only one of them is really applying pressure at any one point, and so you have the other one in which to go with. And so as far as our first dance is concerned, here it is: 12-foot ninja, one hand killing, here on Coin Metal. And that was Slipknot with The Nameless. Yeah, I let it run one over, but I felt compelled to hit up the pipe. My apologies. Anywho, as far as what we're going to get into today, I haven't really hammered a whole lot out. We got a little bit. I always have a ton of tabs open, so that's always a help. But it has been kind of quiet out there. I think people have been watching that candle. Since I sat in front of this computer, it's jumped $22. It being Bitcoin, that is. So, I can imagine everybody's in their portfolio right now, just trying to scalp some profit. And I certainly don't blame you. If I were a better trader, that's probably what I would be doing too. But as far as I'm concerned, the bull run isn't in. Not yet. I think that eventually the Fed will take a look back at the market reaction to their stimulus and say, well, gosh, I guess maybe the market wants more stimulus at the moment. Maybe sometime in the near future we'll be able to turn off that spigot, but apparently it needs a little bit QE now. I mean, this is predictable. But I do believe that that is the direction the Fed is going to be heading into, that they're going to be giving up the fantasy of quantitative tightening and start giving the market what it wants, which is a little bit of juice. There has been tightening pretty much everywhere else too, so it's not something that's exclusive to the United States. But yeah, that kind of thing, more QE coming into the market, it'll certainly initiate a little more investment in cryptocurrency. Both because, the money does have to go somewhere. And this is a point I've kind of belabored, because there's been talk of doing stupid things to adjust the econometrics of Bitcoin. Such as things like the reducing the block size, which would actually increase the demand for the existing block space and make it entirely untenable to be trying to transact on the Bitcoin blockchain. But here's the thing, is like all the people that are calling for this, I think they're really stupid. Number one, most of them aren't miners. I would doubt if any miners are out there saying, yes, I want the number of transactions cut down to 1/3 of what it is right now. No, I'm pretty sure that even the bump in transaction fee costs would be helpful and pleasurable for them to be processing so few transactions for so much money. However, I think they'll probably miss that 60% of transactions over the not so distant time period, and they'd find themselves facing the possibility of having to close down shop just because they're not making enough in the dividend, the transaction fees, in order to make it worthwhile to continue mining. And I'm sure that's at least part of the program there, that there are probably some entities out there that have super advanced fucking miners out there, and they're dying to replace the existing hash rate with their hash rate, and that's always a threat in Bitcoin. But I think the one problem with that ideal of trying to make it to where we're transacting primarily off chain, and that we're having to utilize third-party providers in order to conduct our payments or transactions rather through the Bitcoin network. I think that the presence of several significant alternatives and the lack of friction with those will drive a lot of the market to them. And so I think at that point, when it does become too expensive to transact in Bitcoin, that they're simply going to transact in other coins. They'll move to Dogecoin or Monero or Verge or Bitcoin Cash or XRP or any. Even though I shouldn't mention XRP as a cryptocurrency because I don't know, it's kind of a cryptocurrency, but not really. Anyway, it's kind of humorous to me when such entities like Goldman Sachs get into the idea of, we're gonna make our own coin, everybody's gonna enjoy it, or JP Morgan coin. What's funny about that? The really funny part about that, I called that shit like 2 years ago. If you go to my YouTube channel, I did a show, JP Morgan coin or JPMC coin or something like that. When will it launch and will I be able to mine it? Something to that effect. And 2 years later, here it is. Maybe 2 years from now, we'll be able to see backed. I called it wrecked backed securities, and I called that one too, by the way. I don't know exactly when that was. I want to say it was in 2016 when I did that. But it's because these people have put out announcements. It's not just something that pops up. Like 2 years from now, we'll probably have MasterCard finally releasing their product, which they've already drawn up a patent for, and that one in and of itself, I think I read that one in the patent for it, the original patent for it, I want to say it was in 2015. But in any case, we haven't seen that entity yet, but I have a feeling we will in the not so distant future, as in 1 to 2 years from now. But I think the timeline has been missed by a lot of people, where they've been trying to direct certain projects to do certain things, and they like forget that there's private individuals that are the constituents of the network, and they have the ultimate deciding vote on what software they're going to run and what implementations of that software they're going to run. And you can meet up in backroom deals and shit, but it doesn't matter. What matters is when the rubber hits the road, where the hash power is actually going. And if it's not backing your project and it's not backing your implementations, then those implementations just sit there on the sideline. If you want it supported, you have to support it yourself. And I think there will be a point in the not so distant future where people are really flexing that one a little bit more. First, I think we need to get through this fuck phase, and we get over the illusion that Bitcoin is one of those things where you can just switch all the traffic to off-chain third-party intermediaries and everything's going to be hunky-dory. I think ultimately, if it does reach any kind of adoption, that the third parties that are currently doing so will, a significant number of them will go out of business immediately because they won't be able to endure the regulatory friction for the position they've chosen for themselves. And they think it's real funny, and they think that they can get away with it by saying, this is just for research purposes. We're just researching this software for later implementation, blah, blah, blah. It's a fucking bunch of bullshit. You're never going to make it past your beta implementation that you're allowing people to use right now, really. But in the longer term, I think that most people are viewing Lightning as something that, you're going to be running your own node and you're going to be processing your own transactions, and it's going to be just like Bitcoin, right? No, wrong. The people that have been pitching that have not been disclosing things like legality of it within your jurisdiction, meaning the place that you personally live. They don't talk about that shit. They can't account for where you live. The most some of them have done has been to indicate that they're not actually legal to be used in the United States. And they just say United States, period. Why? Because not only are there federal laws against what they're doing, but there are also state-by-state laws. If you go to New York, BitLicense applies. If you transact with anybody in the state of New York, if they're able to track it in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, you're going to get caught. fucking NYDFS is going to be looking for you. Anywho, speaking of legalities, now this one's kind of interesting because the entity in question is actually a entity from New York, and I think they probably thought that they would be able to escape the clutches of the BitLicense by operating in another jurisdiction. But the BitLicense is very, very, very clear. If you are so much as if you're a relative of somebody in the state of New York and you're doing transactions for them, but you're not in the state of New York, it still applies to you. I know that's really fucked up, but that's one of the reasons why Shapeshift initially, they've changed their policy since, initially they were in New York, and they just said, what? BitLicense? Bye-bye. And they took their ball and they left. Now, of course, since then they've kind of caved on that, and they say it's something of, that they don't really have a choice in the matter, but they do have a choice in the matter. It's they're cowing to the fact that they would be losing a great deal of business by not doing the AML KYC thing, and I think that's really unfortunate, because if they had remained as they were and just let people use their networks, there would have been nobody to really stop them. And as a matter of fact, the entities that were challenging them would have shut the fuck up. And I'll tell you why. Because, and Mr. Voorhees probably already knows this, the entities that would be wanting to apply those laws against him and take him to court and all that shit, those people have relatives. Those people have relatives that have used Shapeshift's service, and Shapeshift has records of it. Or they can at least provide records of it. See, that's really how the game it needs to be played by a lot of naive and idealistic people out there. That if you are going to be putting yourself in a position where you're going to be challenging existing payment processors, you have to assume, number one, that you are going to have customers. It might not be the volume that you would have if you were operating fully legally and all that other bullshit, but you would still have customers. And if you were able to provide the service with as little friction as possible and as dutifully and fulfill on your duties as a third-party intermediary, if you were fulfilling it just as well as Wells Fargo or whatever, they would come to you. If you build it, they will come. I mean, it's a fact of the market. If you make a way available, people will utilize it. Anyway, continuing on, this one's on OCC.gov, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. And this is for immediate release, February 22nd, 2019. Contact Brian Hubbard. OCC issues cease and desist order against MUFG Bank Ltd. for violating the Bank Secrecy Act. Washington. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, today announced a cease and desist order against the New York, primary, Chicago, and Los Angeles federal branches of MUFG Bank Ltd., Tokyo, Japan, for violating the Bank Secrecy Act and its underlying regulations. After a thorough, full-scope examination of the branches of BSA/Anti-Money Laundering AML and Office of Foreign Affairs Control OFAC compliance programs, the OCC found the branch's BSA compliance program had deficiencies, internal controls, wait a minute, hold on. I skipped a line there, hold on. The OCC found the branch's BSA compliance program had deficiencies dating back to June 2016. The examination identified deficiencies in the branch's internal controls, suspicious activity monitoring, foreign correspondent due diligence program, trade finance monitoring, independent audit, and BSA officer staffing functions. These findings cited violation of the statutory and regulatory requirements to maintain an adequate BSA compliance program, file suspicious activity reports, and conduct appropriate due diligence on foreign correspondent accounts. Today's order requires the branches to take comprehensive corrective actions to improve their BSA/AML compliance program. These branches continue to operate under an OCC consent order issued in November 2017, requiring corrective actions to improve OFAC compliance program. The branches have begun corrective actions and are committed to remedying the deficiencies identified by the OCC and enhancing the branch's BSA/AML compliance program. Okay. I want you to think about this really hard for just one moment. If there were an issue with your cryptocurrency exchange, that there were some issue with regard to its compliance and whatnot, do you really think that the OCC and all these other organizations would have waited 3 years to issue a cease and desist order? Probably not. This is one of the reasons why cryptocurrencies were designed not to need the third parties that are required under this regulation to act in certain ways. You know, it's like, number one, by operating outside of the regulatory controls, you're basically taking responsibility for the regulators. You're saying to yourself, at least, I am willing to risk these funds in this way because I feel the advantage of doing so is better than leaving it in the hands of the current market at large. That's a pretty important statement. You know, because you're saying to the regulators as well that I don't need your protection. I'm willing to operate without your protection. I am willing to do the due diligence investigation with regard to the exchanges and the currencies and the projects that I'm investing my capital in. I'm assuming that responsibility. Thank you very much for saying that you can do it for me, but you're not really needed in this case. And that's been the name of the game since 2009, when the Bitcoin white paper came out. Is thank you very much. You guys have done a terrible job. We've gone and designed this currency that can run on consumer grade hardware and not need you in order to help it. So thank you very much for your services. You guys won't be needed here. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. And I think that's one of the things that most people just don't understand about cryptocurrencies. It's something they've not been told about cryptocurrencies. That it's a vote of no confidence in the current fiat system and the current regulations and regulatory structures that are available. We find them insufficient to protect our funds. We find them insufficient to preserve confidence. Because here you go. I mean, this thing. I'm not going to actually read the whole thing. I'm looking at the consent order, and it might have like a little synopsis or something that we could quickly digest. But it's quite long. It's 26 pages. But I don't know. It's looking like pretty fast reading. Yeah, we might actually do this. We might actually digest this whole bad boy today. Because this is, I think this is really educational with regard to how the current legacy market participants are treated by the regulatory entities out there. And that you need to be examining it and considering it in the context of, do I want these people to be regulating the investment organizations that I'm currently operating with? Would these delays between the orders and a final cease and desist be tolerable in regard to cryptocurrencies? I think that's pretty important to keep in mind. Anyway, let's go ahead and digest this thing. United States of America, Department of the Treasury, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Let's see here. This is AAEC 2019-7 Consent Order. Whereas the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, has a supervisory authority over MUFG Bank Ltd., Primary New York Branch, New York, New York, license number 80138, MUBL, Chicago Branch, Chicago, Illinois, license number 80140, and MUBL Los Angeles Branch, Los Angeles, California, license number 80141. Collectively, branches, which are federal branches of the MUFG Bank Ltd., Tokyo, Japan, quote, home office. Whereas pursuant to the OCC's November 7th, 2017, conditional approval number 1182A concerning the branches conversion to federally supervised branches, quote, conditional approval, the OCC required the primary and secondary New York branches to enter into a consent order dated November 9th, 2017. OCC OFAC order to address Office of Foreign Asset Control OFAC deficiencies and U.S. economic sanction concerns for which the New York Department of Financial Services had previously issued consent orders to the branches in 2013 and 2014 NYDFS orders. Whereas the OCC OFAC order required the primary and secondary New York branches to adhere to remedial provisions that are substantively the same as requirements to the in previous NYDFS orders, requirements for which the OCC continues to assess and monitor compliance. Whereas the conditional approval also required the primary and secondary New York branches to consent to either informal or formal enforcement action at the OCC's discretion following a planned assessment, evaluation, or full scope examination by the OCC of the branch's Bank Secrecy Act / Anti-Money Laundering, BSA/AML, and OFAC compliance programs. Conditional approval, condition number 5. Whereas the OCC has conducted a full scope examination of the branches for BSA/AML and OFAC compliance, and has identified BSA/AML deficiencies that were not addressed in the NYDFS orders, which now require the corrective actions outlined in this consent order. Whereas, the OCC further found that the branches failed to timely file suspicious activity reports, SAR, in violation of 12 CFR, weird squiggly line 21.11, involving alerts dating back to June 2016 related to gaps in SAR monitoring for which the bank self-identified and remediating it, and will complete lookbacks as outlined in this order and file SARs where warranted. No, they won't. Whereas the OCC intends to initiate cease and desist proceedings against the branches pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 1818B through the issuance of a notice of charges for identified deficiencies in the branch's BSA/AML compliance program that resulted in violations of law, rule, or regulation, including 12 CFR 21.21 BSA/AML compliance program and 2111 suspicious activity report filings and 31 CFR 1010.610 foreign correspondent banking customer due diligence, and has informed the branches of the findings resulting from its examinations. Whereas, in the interest of cooperation and to avoid additional costs associated with administrative and judicial proceedings with respect to the above matter, the branches, by and through their duly authorized general managers of MUBL's primary New York branch, Chicago branch, Los Angeles branch, managing officials, consent to the issuance of this order by the OCC through the duly authorized representative of the Comptroller of the Currency. And whereas the branches have begun corrective actions and are committed to remedying the deficiencies identified by the OCC and enhancing the branch's BSL/AML compliance program now, therefore, pursuant to the authority vested in the OCC by Section 8B of the Federal Deposit Insurance Act, as amended, 12 U.S.C. 1818B, the OCC hereby orders that, quote, or continuing, Article 1, Jurisdiction. Number 1, the branches are uninsured federal branches licensed and examined by the OCC pursuant to the International Banking Act of 1978, as amended 12 U.S.C. 3101. Number 2, the branches are, quote, insured depository institutions for purposes of 12 U.S.C. 1818, C 12 U.S.C. 1813, C3. 3. The OCC is the, quote, appropriate federal banking agency, as that term is defined in 12 U.S.C. 1813Q, and is therefore authorized to initiate and maintain this cease and desist action against the branches pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 1818B. Article 2. Comptroller's findings. The Comptroller finds and the branches neither admit nor deny the following. Number 1. Branches violated 12 CFR 21.21, 21.11, and 31 CFR 1010.610. Specifically, the branches failed to adopt and implement a compliance program that adequately covered the required BSA/AML program elements. The branches failed to timely file SARs related to suspicious customer activity, and the branches failed to implement appropriate BSA/AML due diligence programs for correspondent accounts of foreign financial institutions. 2. Some of the deficiencies in the elements of the branch's BSA/AML compliance program that resulted in a violation of 12 CFR 21.21, including the following. A. the branches had an inadequate system of internal controls, ineffective independent testing, and a weak BSA officer/staffing function. B. The branches had systemic deficiencies in their transaction monitoring systems, which resulted in monitoring gaps and several high-risk areas, including international wires flowing through high-risk geographies. These deficiencies resulted in a failure to file SARs in a timely manner. C. The branches had deficiencies in their due diligence programs for correspondent accounts for foreign financial institutions, including inadequate analysis of the high-risk ancillary products and international wire transactions following through the correspondent accounts to support detection of unusual or potentially suspicious activities. D. The branches had significant gaps in their processes and procedures for trade finance monitoring. And E. The branches had insufficient audit function, and there were significant audit deficiencies identified in the audit. In the audits covering some of the highest risk customers and products. Number 3. Branches failed to file necessary SARs concerning suspicious customer activity in a timely manner in violation of 12 CFR 21.11. Number 4. The branches failed to develop a satisfactory customer due diligence (CDD) process to effectively manage the risk in its foreign correspondent banking customers in violation of 31 CFR 1010.610. Article 3. Comprehensive BSA/AML action plan. Number 1. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the managing officials shall develop one written action plan detailing the remedial actions necessary for all 3 branches to achieve compliance with Articles 3 through 9 of this order. Action plan. And submit the action plan to the examiner in charge, EIC, for review and prior written determination of no supervisory objection. The action plan at minimum shall specify, quote, A description of the corrective actions needed to achieve compliance with each article of this order. B. Reasonable and well-supported timelines for completion of the corrective actions required by this order. C. The persons responsible for completion of the corrective actions required by this order. And D. Completion dates for self-initiated remediation and look-back projects addressing the 23 BSA/AML monitoring systems coverage gaps. 23. Hold on one moment. Had to rehydrate. Still rehydrating, hold on. Thank goodness for background music, right? 2. The timelines contained in the action plan shall be consistent with any deadlines set forth in this order, including any modifications to the order made pursuant to Article 13, Paragraph 4. 3. In the event the EIC requires changes to the action plan, the managing officials shall incorporate the required changes into the action plan and submit the revised action plan within 30 days of notification of required changes to the EIC for review and prior written determination of no supervisory objection. 4. Upon receipt of written determination of no supervisory objection from the EIC, the managing officials shall ensure the branches timely adopt and implement all corrective actions required by this order, and shall verify that branches adhere to the action plan, including the timelines set forth within the action plan. 5. The branches shall not take any action that will cause a significant deviation from or material change to the action plan. Where the branches consider modifications to the action plan to be appropriate, the managing officials shall submit a revised action plan containing the proposed modifications to the EIC for prior written determination of no supervisory objection. Upon receipt of a written determination of no supervisory objection from the EIC, the managing officials shall ensure the branches timely adopt and implement all corrective actions required by this order and shall verify the branches adhere to the revised action plan. 6. By July 31st, 2019 and thereafter, within 30 days after the end of each calendar quarter, the managing officials shall prepare and submit to the EIC a written action plan progress report setting forth in detail a. The specific corrective actions undertaken to comply with each article of this order. B. The results and status of the corrective actions, including those related to self-initiated remediation and look-back projects for BSA/AML monitoring system coverage gaps, due diligence programs for correspondent accounts for foreign financial institutions, and trade finance AML red flag manual monitoring, and C. A description of the outstanding corrective actions needed to achieve compliance with each article of this order and the party or parties responsible for the completion of outstanding corrective actions. Article 4. Management and accountability. Number 1. The managing officials shall ensure there are clear lines of authority and responsibility for BSA/AML compliance management, and that a competent and independent BSA official is in place on a full-time basis. Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure that staff responsible for compliance in the first and second lines of defense have the appropriate skills, expertise, and level of authority to implement the BSA/AML compliance program and, as needed, question account relationships and business plans. Number 3. The managing officials shall strengthen performance management processes as necessary to ensure they have appropriate means to measure the effectiveness of the BSA official officers, deputy BSA officers, and staff responsible for compliance in the first and second lines of defense. Number 4. The managing officials shall ensure management and staff in the first line of defense are accountable for effectively implementing policies and procedures and fulfilling BSA/AML obligations. Article 5. BSA officers and staffing. Number 1. The managing officials shall ensure the branches maintain a permanent, qualified, and experienced BSA officers who shall be vested with sufficient stature, time, and resources to fulfill the duties and responsibilities of the position and to ensure compliance with the requirements of the Bank Secrecy Act, and whose retention will satisfactorily address any open BSA officer's function, deficiencies, and requirements of this article. Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure the BSA officers, deputy BSA officers, and other staff responsible for the BSA/AML compliance have sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. So basically the feds are saying hire a minimum of 2 and make sure they're qualified. So that's a pretty big expense right there. Continuing. Number 3. If any of the BSA officer or deputy BSA officer positions BSA senior staff are vacated or modified, the managing officials shall provide written notice to the EIC within 30 days of the vacancy or modifications and shall obtain a written determination of no supervisory objection for new hires or replacements. Number 4. Within 90 days of this order, the managing officials shall conduct a formal written assessment of the adequacy of the branch's BSA senior staff functions and BSA/AML staffing to ensure compliance with the requirements of the BSA. This assessment shall include, at minimum, A. The BSA senior staff's stature, authority, scope of responsibilities, time, and resources. B. The BSA senior staff's knowledge, skills, and capabilities to understand the BSA/AML risks of complex, high-risk products and services offered by the branches, perform their assigned responsibilities, and ensure the branch's compliance with the requirements of the Bank Secrecy Act. And C. The number, qualifications, and experience of staff needed to support the BSA senior staff and the branch's BSA/AML compliance functions. 5. Within 60 days after completing the formal written assessment under paragraph 4 of this article, the managing officials shall ensure the branches implement any changes that are needed regarding the BSA senior staff and supporting staff, including their responsibilities, authority, stature, independence, competencies, and capabilities. In particular, the managing officials shall ensure the BSA senior staff and supporting staff have sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. Number 6. The managing officials shall periodically, and no less than annually, review the adequacy of the branch's BSA senior staff and supporting staff and shall document their determinations in writing. The periodic review shall consider the factors described in paragraph 4 of this article. Article 6. BSA/AML Risk Assessment. Number 1. Pursuant to the BSA/AML action plan submitted under Article 3, the managing officials shall ensure the branches review, update, and implement an effective BSA/AML risk assessment process, including supporting policies and procedures for gathering accurate and relevant data, to provide for a comprehensive written assessment of the branch's BSA/AML risk profile that enables management to apply appropriate risk management processes to mitigate risk. BSA/AML risk assessment. Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure the staff responsible for the BSA/AML risk assessment have sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. Number 3. The BSA/AML risk assessment shall consider all pertinent information and include, at minimum, A. The risk and mitigating controls associated with each line of business and with higher risk products, customers, services, and geographies, including but not limited to foreign correspondent banking customers, foreign correspondent banking transactions, pouch services, U.S. dollar drafts, trade finance, bearer shares, remote deposit capture, and monetary instruments. B. The identification of specific lines of business, geographies, products, or processes where controls are not commensurate with the level of BSA/AML risk exposure. C. The BSA/AML risk both individually within business lines and on a consolidated basis across all activities and product lines. And D. Aggregation of the branch's BSA/AML risk that is reasonable and clearly supported in the work papers. The work papers and supporting documentation shall be readily accessible for a third-party review. 4. The BSL/AML risk assessment shall also include assessments of the organizational structure, effectiveness, competency of management, accountability, staff requirements, internal controls, customer due diligence processes, enhanced due diligence processes, risk assessment processes, suspicious activity monitoring and reporting systems and processes, audit independent testing results, and training. Number 5. The BSA/AML risk assessment shall be reevaluated and or refreshed by the managing officials periodically, the time frame for which shall not exceed 12 months, or whenever there is a significant change in the BSA/AML risk within the branches or the lines of businesses within the branches. In other words, we're going to be watching you. Number 6. The BSA/AML risk assessment shall also be independently reviewed by the branch's internal audit function for the adequacy of the methodology and accuracy of findings. Number 7. If the EIC requires changes to the evaluation or assessments, the branches shall incorporate those changes or suggest alternatives that are acceptable to the EIC. The branches shall adopt, implement, and adhere to the BSA/AML risk assessment. Article 7. Foreign correspondent banking customer due diligence. Number 1. Pursuant to the BSA/AML action plan submitted under Article 3, the managing officials shall ensure that the branches review, update, and implement effective foreign correspondent banking, CDD policies and procedures, and management information systems. MIS, to enable the branches to reliably detect and report on an ongoing basis any known or suspected money laundering activity. How about stop? Nothing in there about stopping it. You notice that? Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure the staff responsible for gathering CDD information and for the development and maintenance of the MIS have sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. Holy shit. Hold on a moment. Managing officials shall ensure that the branches review, update, and implement effective foreign correspondent CDD policies and procedures and management information systems, MIS, to enable the branches to reliably detect and report on an ongoing basis any known or suspected money laundering activity. Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure the staff responsible for gathering CDD information and for the development and maintenance of the MIS have sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. Oh, great! So now you gotta hire an MIS team too. So that's like 7 people now. 3. These CDD policies and procedures must be documented and address any identified CDD deficiencies. At a minimum, the policies and procedures shall include A. A methodology for assigning customer risk ratings that considers appropriate factors such as type of customer, geographic activity, the expected account activity by type of service used, including the volume and frequency by dollar amount and number, and the specification of the CDD information that must be obtained commensurate with these risk levels. B. Policies and procedures to establish a risk profile for each customer that encompasses a customer's entire relationship and includes the nature and the purpose of the account, actual and or anticipated activity in the account, ergo, type, volume, and value, number and dollar, of transaction activity engaged in, nature of the customer's business or occupation, customer location, ergo, customer's geographic location, where they transact business and where they have significant operations, types of products and services used by the customer, material changes in the customer's relationship, as well as other factors outlined in the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council's BSA/AML Examination Manual. C. Policies and procedures to obtain customer information regarding the customer's relationship with the branches. This includes accounts within all lines of businesses, regions, and countries, as permitted by the laws of each jurisdiction, whose transactions are processed by one or more of the branches. D. Policies and procedures that comply with 31 CFR 1010.610 for foreign correspondent accounts that ensure the required due diligence information is recorded in an automated system of record and ensure 1. Timely, sustained, and documented periodic reviews of foreign correspondent account relationships. 2. Nested account activity risk is effectively identified and managed through risk-based processes. And 3. Identification, monitoring, and review of pouch and US dollar products and accounts. E. Policies and procedures to ensure CDD includes ongoing monitoring to identify and report suspicious transactions and on a risk basis to maintain and update customer information as defined in 31 CFR 1020.210B5 and F. A due diligence database that is readily accessible to the relationship manager and the other parties responsible for the customer relationship. BSA/AML compliance personnel, suspicious activity monitoring alert and analysts, and investigators, and quality control personnel. Jesus Christ! Now you got another group of people that you have to hire. I think we're up to 30 now. 4. CDD MIS shall be commensurate with the branch's BSA/AML risk as identified by the branch's risk assessments required by Article 6 and shall provide appropriate business BSA/AML compliance and investigation staff with the appropriate access to sufficient CDD information to enable timely and sound analysis and monitoring of customers' activity. So in other words, they want you to hire your own cops and some system admins, and they want you to them to route on your customers to you, and you got to route back to these guys. Anyway, continuing. Number 5. If the EIC requires changes to the CDD policies and procedures or the CDD MIS, the branches shall incorporate those changes or suggest alternatives that are acceptable to the EIC. The branches shall adopt, implement, and adhere to the CDD policies and procedures and the CDD IMS. And to the CDD MIS. My apologies there. Article 8. Suspicious activity monitoring, investigation, and reporting. Number 1. Pursuant to the AML/BSA action plan submitted under Article 3, the managing officials shall ensure the branches review, update, and implement effective policies and procedures that comply with the requirements of this article and address any identified suspicious activity monitoring, investigation process, and reporting deficiencies. Suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program. Such policies and procedures shall ensure the timely, appropriate, and documented investigation and disposition of potentially suspicious activity and timely filing of SARs. Number 2. The managing officials shall ensure the staff responsible for the suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program has sufficient authority, training, and skills to perform their assigned responsibilities. Number 3. The suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program shall be sufficiently robust and tailored to the branch's risk profile, operations, and all lines of business, including foreign correspondent banking accounts, intermediary wires, and trade finance, and shall provide for a timely identification of potentially suspicious activity, b appropriately designed and implemented business logic units, parameters, rules, or other factors used in automated transaction monitoring systems to identify customer activity that is unreasonable or abnormal, including full remediation of the 23 BSA/AML monitoring system coverage gaps. So in other words, according to their investigations, they've already found 23 BSA/AML monitoring system coverage lapses, and they want you to fix this shit. C. Timely and accurate data feeds into the transaction monitoring system. D. Sufficient MIS to manage and adjust the transaction monitoring systems and processes to validate automated monitoring system settings. And E. A comprehensive trade finance AML red flag monitoring process that includes appropriate counterparty and pricing analysis. Number 4. With respect to the investigation process, the suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program must provide for a. Qualified staffing to perform alert reviews and case investigations. B. Development, implementation, and adherence to appropriate risk-based policies and procedures for the disposition of alerts and case investigations, including timing, documentation, and quality standards. C. Development, implementation, and adherence to policies and procedures for ensuring timely submission by the branch's lines of business of all necessary information needed for analysis to complete comprehensive alert reviews and case investigations. D. Effective and sustainable quality controls processes designed to ensure compliance with the policies and procedures established in B and C. And E. Timely escalation of any backlogs in alert reviews, case investigations, or SAR filings to the BSA officers and managing officials. 5. If the EIC requires changes to the suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program, the branches shall incorporate those changes or suggest alternatives that are acceptable to the EIC. Branches shall adopt, implement, and adhere to suspicious activity monitoring and reporting program. Article 9. BSA/AML internal audit. Number 1. Pursuant to the BSA/AML action plan submitted under Article 3, the managing officials shall ensure the branches review, update, and implement an effective BSA/AML audit program, BSA/AML internal audit program, so that scope, testing, documentation, and follow-up are sufficient to cover high-risk products, services, and customers, and address any identified deficiencies. The BSA/AML internal audit program shall A. Detect irregularities in the branch's operations. B. Perform a sufficient audit quality assurance review to ensure adequate internal controls, including ensuring the disposition of alerts and investigations are accurate and properly supported. C. Determine the branch's level of compliance with all applicable BSA/AML laws, rules, and regulations. D. Determine the root causes for BSA/AML compliance program deficiencies. E. Evaluate the branch's adherence to established policies and procedures. F. Perform an appropriate level of testing to support the audit findings. And G. Ensure adequate audit coverage and audit frequency in all areas. 2. The managing officials shall ensure appropriate oversight of the audit function for BSA/AML compliance, with particular emphasis on an adequately staffed BSA/AML audit department or outside firm that has the necessary expertise and knowledge regarding the BSA/AML and adequate number of individuals employed. I guess they're qualified to determine how many people you should hire. Continuing. 3. The managing officials shall ensure that the branches conduct a formal written assessment of the branch's internal audit staffing. This assessment shall include, at a minimum, the number, qualifications, and experience of staff needed to maintain sufficient qualified staff in the internal audit department, including quality assurance and standards teams to provide for timely execution of independent audit and quality assurance reviews of completed audits, and provide sufficient training on internal controls relative to their respective roles and responsibilities. Okay, so now you got to hire about 60 people, and you have to train some of them at least. 4. All audit reviews prepared by the internal audit staff or an independent third party shall be in writing and supported by adequate work papers, which must be provided to the branches. The managing officials shall ensure the branches take immediate actions to remedy deficiencies cited in audit reports, and the auditors maintain a written record describing those actions. 5. If the EIC requires changes to the BSA/AML internal audit program, the branches shall incorporate those changes or suggest alternatives that are acceptable to the EIC. The branches shall adopt, implement, and adhere to the BSA/AML internal audit program. Article 10. General Managing Officials' Responsibilities. 1. The managing officials shall ensure the branches timely adopt and implement all corrective actions required by this order, and shall verify the branches adhere to the corrective actions and that they are effective in addressing the branch's deficiencies that resulted in this order. 2. In each instance in which this order imposes responsibilities upon the managing officials, it is intended to mean the managing official shall a. authorize, detect, and adopt corrective actions on behalf of the branches as may be necessary to perform the obligations and undertakings imposed on the branches by this order. B. Ensure the branches have sufficient processes, management, personnel, control systems, and corporate and risk governance to implement and adhere to all provisions of this order. C. Requires the branches, management, and personnel have sufficient training and authority to execute their duties and responsibilities pertaining to or resulting from this order. D. Hold the branch's management and personnel accountable for executing their duties and responsibilities pertaining to or resulting from this order. E. Require appropriate, adequate, and timely reporting to the managing officials by the branch's management of corrective actions, directed by the managing officials to be taken under the terms of this order. And F. Address any non-compliance with corrective actions in a timely and appropriate manner. Article 11. Waivers. 1. The branches, by executing and consenting to this order, waive a. any and all rights to the issuance of a notice of changes pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 1818, b. any and all procedural rights available in connection with the issuance of this order, c. any and all rights to a hearing and a final agency decision pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 1818 and 12 CFR Part 19. D. Any and all rights to seek any type of administrative or judicial review of this order. E. Any and all claims for fees, costs, or expenses against the OCC or any of the officers, employees, or agents related in any way to this enforcement matter or this order, whether arising under common law or under the terms of any state, including but not limited to the Equal Access to Justice Act, 5 U.S.C. 504 and 28 U.S.C. 2412. F. Any and all rights to assert this proceeding, the consent to and or the issuance of this order as the basis for a claim of double jeopardy in any pending or future proceeding brought by any other representative of the United States or any agency thereof, including without limitation to the United States Department of Justice, and G. Any and all rights to challenge or contest the validity of this order. So don't accept it and all this shit goes away. Article 12. Other provisions. Number 1. Regarding the effect of this order, and unless the OCC informs the branches otherwise in writing with respect to any or all of the subparts below, A. The Home Office is treated as an, quote, eligible foreign bank pursuant to 12 CFR 2812 F2 for the purposes of 12 CFR Part 28 Subpart B, regarding licensing, supervision, and operations of the federal branches and agencies, and B. The branches are not subject to the restrictions in 12 CFR 5.51 requiring prior notice to the OCC of changes in directives and senior executive officials. 2. Notwithstanding paragraph 1 of this article, the branch's status under 12 CFR 5.51 C7 and 2812F is contingent upon the branch's satisfaction of the requirements of 12 CFR 5.51 C7 13 and 2812 F1. Article 13. Closing. This order is a settlement of the cease and desist proceeding against the branches contemplated by the OCC based on the violations of law and regulation described in the Comptroller's findings set forth in Article 2 of this order. The OCC releases and discharges the branches from all potential liability for a cease and desist order that has been or might have been asserted by the OCC based on the violations described in Article 2 of this order to the extent known to the OCC as of the effective date of this order. Nothing in this order, however, shall prevent the OCC from A. Instituting enforcement actions other than a cease and desist order against the branches based on the Comptroller's findings set forth in Article 2 of this order. B. Instituting enforcement actions against the branches based on any other findings. C. Instituting enforcement actions against institution-affiliated parties as defined by 12 U.S.C. 1813 U based on the Comptroller's findings set forth in Article 2 of this order or any other findings. Or D. Utilizing the Comptroller's findings set forth in Article 2 of this order in future enforcement actions against the branches or its institution-affiliated parties to establish a pattern or the continuation of a pattern. Number 2. Nothing in this order is to release, discharge, compromise, settlement, dismissal, or resolution of any actions or in any way affects any actions that may be or have been brought by any other representative of the United States or an agency thereof, including, without limitation, the United States Department of Justice. Number 3. This order is A. A cease and desist order issued upon consent within the meaning of 12 U.S.C. 1818b. B. A cease and desist order which has become final within the meaning of 12 U.S.C. 1818e. C. An order issued with the consent of the depository institution within the meaning of 12 U.S.C. 1818 H2. D. An effective and outstanding order within the meaning of 12 U.S.C. 1818 I1. And E. A final order within the meaning of 12 U.S.C. 1818 I2 and U. 4. This order is effective upon its issuance by the OCC through the Comptroller's duly authorized representative, except as otherwise expressly provided herein. All references to days in this order shall mean calendar days, and the computation of any period of time imposed by this order shall not include the date of this act or the event that commences the period of time. The provisions of this order shall remain effective except to the extent that and until such time as such provisions are amended, suspended, waived, or terminated in writing by the OCC through the Comptroller's duly authorized representative. If the branches seek an extension, amendment, supervision, waiver, or termination of any provision of this order, or within any plan or program submitted pursuant to this order, the management officials shall submit a written request to the EIC asking for relief. Any request submitted pursuant to this paragraph shall include a statement setting forth in detail the special circumstances that prevent the branches from complying with the relevant provisions of the order or plan or program submitted pursuant to this order, and shall be accompanied by relevant supporting documentation. The OCC's decision concerning a request submitted pursuant to this paragraph will be communicated to the managing officials in writing, is final, and not subject to further review. Number 5. The branches will not be deemed to be in compliance with this order until they have adopted, implemented, and adhered to all of the corrective actions set forth in each article of this order. The corrective actions are effective in addressing the branch's deficiencies, and the OCC has verified and validated the corrective actions. An assessment of the effectiveness of the corrective actions requires sufficient passage of time for the branches to demonstrate the sustained effectiveness of the corrective actions. Number 6. This order is not a contract binding on the United States Treasury Department, the OCC, or any officer, employee, or agent of the OCC, and neither the branches nor the OCC intends this order to be a contract. Number 7. Each citation, guidance, or issuance referenced in this order includes any subsequent citation, guidance, or issuance that replaces, supersedes, amends, or revises the referenced, cited, citation, guidance, or issuance. Number 8. No separate promise or inducement of any kind has been made by the OCC or by its officers, employees, or agents to cause or induce the branches to consent to the issuance of this order. 9. All reports, plans, or programs submitted to the OCC pursuant to this order shall be submitted by overnight mail or via email to the following, and I'm not going to read all that out. Number 10. The terms of this order, including this paragraph, are not subject to amendment or modification by any extraneous expression, prior agreements, or prior arrangements between the parties, whether oral or written. In testimony whereof the undersigned authorized by the Comptroller as his duly authorized representative has hereunto set his signature on behalf of the Comptroller and Vance Esperance, Deputy Comptroller, Large Bank Supervision. In testimony hereof, the undersigned, the managing officials of the New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles branches have hereunto set their signatures on behalf of the office, of the home office and the branches. And there's no signatures on these. Okay, and we're done. Wow, amazingly enough, we managed to digest that one in about an hour and change. Yeah. So these guys are in deep doo-doo, or so it seems. And considering their home office isn't in the United States, it seems to me probably the corrective action that they'll end up taking will be to terminate the offices in as much as their current facilities or faculties are undertaking certain responsibilities that they are not currently in compliance with as per the federal regulations. So what they'll probably do is downsize the branch offices, terminate the segments of their business that they cannot comply with, repackage it under a new umbrella, and sell it to somebody else. Because according to this thing, they're going to end up having to hire between 100 to 200 people, or hire a third party to do review and ensure that they're actually complying. And that seems to me like it would constitute a really significant cost to them. Like in the millions, possibly tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. But it's a lot of money. So it's really going to depend on how much their current business with those United States branches is actually worth to them. You know, is it worth it to maintain those relationships? Because if it costs more to actually adhere to these policies and hire the people to ensure that they are actually doing so, it's a cost benefit thing. You know, they're going to be looking at it saying, well, you know, according to our current timeline of progression, you know, our current game plan, is it going to be worth us to maintain those offices? And if not, what the fuck are we going to do? Are we going to continue those businesses as is? Or are we going to find some little loophole that will allow us to continue operating in non-compliance? Because it seemed like to me, at least, if they had some competent lawyers, they could probably figure out some loopholes to keep themselves in operation as is for, I don't know, indefinitely. It really depends on how much they're willing to endure. You know, if they simply disregard the compliance order, that would be an option. You know, because if they sign off on this, then they'll have to adhere to all of this. If not, they'll end up in court. And so, you know, they'll have to be looking at challenging the cease and desist orders in court, and how much that might actually cost them. But they could afford to keep it held up in court relatively cheaply by comparison to the actual compliance. I mean, it seems to me, you know, like I said, if it was worth, you know, a few billion a year or whatever to maintain those branch offices, they might want to go ahead and hire some lawyers and hold it up in court for a few years. You know, at such time as either the regulations have been amended to where they're no longer in non-compliance, or B, it's no longer worth it to maintain. You know, the project had a certain shelf life. The shelf life was exceeded within the time period that they were held up in court, so they could afford to lose the case and declare bankruptcy in the process, and you know, terminate the existence of the legal entity and no longer maintain those branches, and then they'll be in compliance internationally too, and ready to set up shop under another set of another signage, and everything is golden. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music. That was a bit long. And as far as what to throw down with, let's go with a little bit of corrosion of conformity. Great purification here on Coin Metal. And that was Death Clock with Go Forth and Die. I gotta tell you, man, for a band that was basically like that existed to support a cartoon, I love them. They're like, if you can imagine all the best attributes of metal and stuffed them all into one band, and then made it like easily digestible and approachable, I think that's exactly what you would get. You would get Death Clock. Anyway, I kind of off in the woods there. With regard to what we were talking about earlier, this cease and desist order by the OCC, I think that it's kind of silly when you look at it from the angle of, they're basically telling them to hire a whole bunch of people and institute a whole bunch of policies that are probably going to make them unprofitable. I mean, at least by their current standard of operation. I mean, if they've had 23 lapses in due diligence reporting and AML KYC kind of bullshit, what's the expectation that they're going to be straightening up and getting with it? I don't see it. It's probably due to some sort of culture conflict between their home office and, of course, the regulatory requirements of the United States. And so, that's always a source of friction, But anyway, with regard to KYC AML bullshit, I got this article here on BitcoinWarrior.net. My Ether wallet resists KYC with new fiat withdrawal feature, and this is authored on the 23rd of February 2019. So apparently, someone from the future wrote it. My Ether wallet, or MEW for short, has added fiat withdrawals to its long list of features. User of the popular Ethereum web wallet can now seamlessly convert their crypto holdings to euros or Swiss francs, then deposit those funds directly into their bank account. What's more, the feature will not require users to submit identification as part of a KYC procedure, something that most competing services require. And even though the option is mostly of use to European investors, MEW's decision could kick off a trend of KYC resistance. No need for ID. To execute withdrawals, MEW relies on a third-party fiat gateway called Biddy. Fiat gateways are simply services that convert crypto to cash or vice versa. Brokers and exchanges usually provide these gateways, although some blockchains are attempting to integrate the feature as well. Of course, local regulations determine the procedures that any given gateway must adhere to. Biddy is based in Switzerland, and the country's regulations indicate that Biddy doesn't have to collect user information for small amounts. Other countries require KYC far more often than Switzerland does, i.e. the United States. Biddy does, however, comply with Swiss anti-money laundering laws. It just doesn't need to collect user data to do so. Instead, it will use proof of wallet ownership to ensure that nobody is exploiting the system. This approach ensures regulatory compliance while providing a seamless user experience. Not entirely. I can think of a way to get around all of their AML KYC requirements entirely, but I'm not going to disclose that here. The rise of KYC. KYC measures have become increasingly commonplace in the crypto world. Regulators who demand KYC compliance claim that the process provides a way to stop criminal activity and terrorism. However, Critics believe that KYC measures deny services to legitimate users, or that KYC simply doesn't work. Actually, there's a third one. It endangers customers by creating in the services vast databases, i.e. honeypots, that hackers will suddenly try to get a hold of and sell on the black web, if not the institution itself doing so and then claiming that they got hacked. Continuing, the trend has been spreading rapidly. Services that once did not require KYC, such as local bitcoins and Shapeshift, have started demanding identity documents from users. Entire blockchains like Civic have even evolved to deal with the issue. Meanwhile, decentralized exchanges and peer trading sites are resisting the trend. Although KYC may be beneficial in some ways, it does put an immense burden on users. MyEtherWallet and Biddy seem to be balancing regulatory compliance with accessibility, something that many platforms may have to do if they want to compete. Oh, wait a minute. And apparently this article had first been on some other website. Yeah, apparently Mike Dalton wrote this article. Thank you, Mike. Yes, penis. And it was last updated February 21st. So apparently this is written in the past and false advertised by somebody in the future. Anywho, so yeah, people trying to circumnavigate AML, KYC. You know, if you were to add to this some, I don't know, a Tor connection, or I2P, and there you go. You've circumvented the geographic requirement, and you're off to the races. And there's plenty of people doing it. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I think that overall, in the longer term, governments are going to take a look at the cost benefit of AML KYC, and they're going to understand that all of their requirements are endangering the finances of everybody, not simply the little people that you don't really mind if they get circumvented or if they get compromised or any of that shit, but the big people too. And I think this is a danger that a lot of people, it's like they discount it, right? You know what I mean? The fact of the matter is that bribery, treason, basically giving away secrets that you're not supposed to, or misappropriating secrets that you're not supposed to, or misutilizing secrets that you're not supposed to use in that way, is an ever-growing temptation. And so when you provide vast honeypots as a temptation for people to get to, and you provide moderate kind of security measures, at least affordable considerations with regard to security, but say that's all you can do. We read earlier this week that there are some entities that are gathering this information and aren't even bothering to encrypt it. So anybody that knows to look for the access points to be spying and shit, all they have to do is look, and they can find one. And one, it's not going to stop at one. Because the thing that made that particular case that we were talking about particularly dangerous is that it was for casinos. People aren't suspecting that their information is being spread around all over the web and whatnot when they're trying to log into their casino. Like whether they're buying a meal or going into their hotel room. All that activity is documented by that particular system. So if you've stayed at a hotel that uses that system, you are at threat of having your shit compromised. You know, I mean, I have never actually stayed at a hotel under my name. I've stayed as like a sign-on person, and I had to provide contact information. I still get fucking calls from some motherfucker that managed to get the information from that Marriott hack, I'm assuming. Either that or from Marriott just selling my fucking information to somebody else. Who's to tell, right? But this is a dangerous age that we're living in, and not enough people are taking this shit seriously. You know, I just talked to a couple of customer service agents for my cell service, not my cell service, my home's line service. And you know, having done that job, I know what they teach you about how to not disclose information to social engineers and how to catch it when you're talking to a social engineer. And I know I caught at least like 5, maybe 6, and I never disclosed my customers' information. But the persons that I talked to, and I talked to 2 separate agents, both of those people, I feel that their level of competency and understanding of exactly what position they hold and what security risk they pose to their customers' information, I don't think they understood that at all. I really don't. The first one blurted out my phone number and my address to me on the phone. And I'm like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to ask me what that information is. You're not supposed to tell me what that information is. Is your address 1234 Suicide Lane? Give me a fucking break, man. But these are factors to consider when you're giving up information. This is why I don't have a cell phone in my legal name, because it represents a fucking security risk for me. Somebody gets my real name and my phone number. Now they can call my fucking cell phone provider and pose as me. And I can't remember my PIN. This is my address. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The customer service agent would say, is your address 1234 Suicide Lane? And there you go. He's got my name, my address, and my phone number. Now he could probably access my bank account. If he knows how to ask, he could probably get the fucking routing number out of the same fucking idiot that was blurting out my address. And I'm sorry, dude, you're a fucking idiot. I know you're under, like, 30 from your voice and whatnot, and so you got time to get out of that idiocy, but I'm telling you, man, people just do not take this shit seriously enough. So it is up to you to do it for them. You know, I say it on every show, watch out for your own bunghole, and that's exactly what I fucking mean. You cannot count on a federal entity to do it. You cannot count on a state entity to do it. And unless a cop is in a room, you can't expect him to do it either. You really can't expect a bank to do it. You can't expect your cell phone provider to do it. You have to do it for you. And if you don't, you run the risks. The closer you put it to the true information, the bigger the risk it is. You know, that I admire and applaud the efforts to try and get around AML KYC bullshit. But the fact of the matter is that if you are dealing with Google directly, like if you're requiring your customers to download their shit through the Google Play Store, or even Apple's Play Store, or Samsung's Play Store, or any of these big ass companies' Play Store, if you don't like host the code somewhere for them to fucking download, you're asking them to undertake risks just by downloading your shit. disclosing who they are, where they live, what their phone number is, what their banking information is. All of these things become subject to a great deal of risk that they weren't before. And it is exactly governments requiring AML, KYC bullshit and identification bullshit, as they have, that creates the risk. It makes it real easy to, develop some sort of psychological profile on people, but exactly to what end? Administrations change, policies change, laws change over time. So again, why risk what you do not have to? And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate it, especially when I'm reading through hour-long drafts of legislation or enforcement orders in this case. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I'd like y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else can do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I have not picked one out. I know it's kind of typical. I like to fly by the seat of my pants. And what exactly to play? Well, got some of that. We haven't played any prong. That gives us some options right there. And as a matter of fact, I think I've got exactly the right song. And so here it is, Rude Awakening, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent weekend.